Welcome everybody. Good morning. It's September already somehow. I'd still like to think it's summer, at least until Labor Day. Thanks, Julie, for kicking us off with some tunes this morning. If folks have walk or bike themed music that you would like to have added to the Safe Routes playlist, you can put it in the chat or email it to Julie. Since it's a few minutes after 5, I think we will go ahead and get started. Let's see if I can successfully share my screen. Always the challenge of the day. I think I've done that. Welcome everybody to the September Minnesota Safe Routes to School Network call. I'm excited to be with you all today. What is the Safe Routes to School Network? It is hundreds of dedicated professionals from organizations and agencies across Minnesota. They're advancing safe routes to school, better walking and biking and rolling routes for kids who want to get to their schools. We do this by building skills, supporting partnerships between state and local agencies, municipalities, advocacy organizations, and advocating for policy changes that support walking and bicycling and rolling to schools. And our goal, our work that we're doing together is about making Minnesota a state where all students, no matter their race, ethnicity, income level, age, ability, or geographic location, can walk, roll, and bike on routes that are safe, comfortable, and convenient. That's a little bit about the Safe Routes to School Network. My name is Alyssa Shuffman. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Move Minnesota. I am doing our welcome today. We will kick off with a short MnDOT update from Rachel Benson, and then I'm really excited that we have Tom and Jill to talk with us about engagement and evaluation. I think they're two very important sides of the same coin in terms of thinking about what the work is that we're doing, who we're engaging, and then how we're making sure that we're learning from that engagement. So very, very excited to have those folks presenting with us today. We'll have a little bit of time for discussion kind of as we go through and then at the end, and then we'll close with a few announcements. So with that, I will stop sharing and kick it over to Rachel for the MnDOT update.
Sounds good. And now I'm going to try to share my screen. I don't know if someone can give me access to share my screen.
I'm on it.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Julie, for tech whizzing, as always.
Yes.
Okay, you should be able to now.
Okay. Yep. All right. So thank you everybody for being here today. I'm taking over for Dave this time around. He's not here today. So my name's Rachel. I'm a planning intern helping Dave out with Safe Routes to School stuff. And I'll be giving the MnDOT update today. So if you have any questions, I can do my best to answer them. Otherwise, feel free to reach out to him, especially if you have any questions related to solicitations opening up soon. He would be very happy to answer any questions you have. So a friendly reminder that October 12th is Walk to School Day. Hopefully your plans are well underway and you're preparing for a great event. Also a reminder to get your event registered. Getting registered has a lot of advantages and it helps us track safe routes to school activity across the state. You can register at walkbiketoschool.org. And schools that register ahead of October 5th will receive an event packet from MnDOT, which includes posters to hang around school, stickers to give to kids who walk and bike. There's a reflective zipper pulls to put on kids' backpacks and other resources to connect you to ideas for successful Walk to School Day events. We also have our annual photo contest with Walk to School, so be sure to take pictures, write up your event details, and submit to the Minnesota Safe Routes to School Facebook page or in an email to Dave. We also have Walk to School Day marketing materials available on our website. And Julie's going to be putting some links in the chat as I go through. So thanks in advance, Julie. But there will be a link with these marketing materials, so you can market Walk to School Day with flyers, There's postcards, social media slides. You can customize these materials to fit a specific school or the specific activities at the school using PowerPoint. And then there's also parent flyers available for volunteer recruitment. And all of these materials are available in English, Somali, Mun, and Spanish. Next up, we have solicitations opening. So I'm going to give a high-level overview of our Boost grants, planning assistance grants, our Greater Minnesota TA grants, and then our active transportation program infrastructure grants. But again, Julie will be dropping links in the chat to web pages for each of these. So there's a lot more detail, answers to frequently asked questions, links to informational webinars that we'll be having. So I highly recommend checking that out. First up is Safe Routes to School Boost Grants. For Boost Grants, we have up to $300,000 in funds available. Applications are due by November 30th. Projects must be completed by June 30th, 2023. And some ideal projects for Boost Grants includes things like bike fleets, bike racks, traffic gardens, or any sort of tangible item that can be purchased to support Safe Routes to School work. Also on the webpage, there's a PDF with a lot of ideas for what Boost Grants can be used for. And then there will be an informational webinar in mid-September, I believe, and mid-October. Then we have our Safe Routes to School planning assistance grants. For this, we have up to $400,000 in planning assistance funds available, no match required, and applications are due January 11th, 2023. Again, there will be informational webinars coming up. And then we have our Greater Minnesota TA solicitation for infrastructure projects, and this opens on October 3rd. LOIs are due November 4th, and the full application is due January 13th. And these require a 20% local match, and they can cover both Safe Routes to School or active transportation projects. And there's funding targets and a guide also available on the website. And then finally, we have our active transportation program infrastructure solicitation. And so this includes a lot of different possible projects. It could include new trails, sidewalks, accessible pedestrian ramps. It can also include pedestrian and cyclist lighting at intersections, improved crossings, medians, curb extensions. It also includes pedestrian and cyclist signage and striping, rapid rectangular flashing beacons, any other pedestrian or cyclist improvements that are within about a mile of applicant schools. So for this, there will be $3.5 million in grant funds available, and they can cover up to 100% of eligible construction costs, and also cover the local match for previously awarded federal bicycle and pedestrian grants. And there's a minimum of $50,000 and a maximum of $500,000 per application. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on the visualizing tool that we have. This is a really good resource if you're planning to apply for an award. You can see schools that have received awards in the past for planning assistance, for boost grants, for infrastructure. You can see what schools are participating in what Safe Routes to School activities. So it's a really good way to see what areas might need a plan update, or what areas could use some enhancement with a boost grant. You can also see unfunded Safe Routes to School projects and keep that in mind for opportunities to reapply or in supporting a community in getting funding. And that is all I have for the update today. If you have any questions, I can try to answer, or I can take a note and have Dave get back to you. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel. That was, I feel like, some very condensed information in a lot of
Yeah.
slides. I know that for our network call next month, we're going to be doing a deep dive on some boost grants, and Dave's going to be talking a little bit more about some of these upcoming deadlines, knowing that, you know, the turnaround for some of these things is going to be, I think in particular with the boost grants, the funds have to be expended by June or July of next year, and that's a very short turnaround. So definitely encourage folks to get in touch with Dave if you have any questions because of that short turnaround. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, so I will thank you, Rachel, for your time. It's nice to have you here on the network call, and I hope we'll see you again. With that, I will kick it over to Tom to talk about whys and hows of engagement. And Julie, I think you may need, I'm not sure if Tom has slides, but you've already got it. Great. I don't even need to be here. Julie's got it.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Rachel. Do apply for Safe Routes to School planning assistance grants. That is where I have been working for the past 6 years with Dave and the people from MnDOT as part of the Alta-led team on the consultant side. So my name is Tom Holmes. I work at a company called Zan Associates. We specialize in engagement for infrastructure projects. And I have been going to schools all throughout Minnesota in different ways since 2017, 2018 school year as part of Safe Routes to School. I've been talking with people, both urban, rural, suburban settings all over the state, and am hoping to have some good lessons learned, not just for planning assistance grants, but for whatever Safe Routes to School endeavor that you're working on right now in your local community. My favorite part about Safe Routes to School is going to talk to students. We have found some great ways to find people where they're at already. I have many different types of materials, but I don't think any of the secrets behind Safe Routes to School are unknown to you all. It's showing up where people are at in ways that work best for them. I saw a few people on the call who are part of our planning assistance grants this year. I saw Sarah and I saw Sophie on the call, as well as Colin. So I'll give you all a second at the end to if you have any additional things that we've done so far this year that you want to talk about. So when we go out and do engagement, we try and find fun and active ways to get people involved. It's evolved over the years, but we always try and make it interesting for the folks who are showing up. Our kind of default way of showing up to talk to people is at open houses or parent-teacher conferences, at tables. But what we do when we first start is we listen to the school staff and the local team and hear where people are already meeting. We've learned over the years that it's easiest to glom on to some existing event because families are busy. They have a lot of things going on already. And they're already showing up in so many different ways for the school. So we just set up in a place that's already happening. I think on the left was an open house, maybe 2016, 2017 year. And I want to highlight that one especially because that's a local team member who showed up just like Sophie and Sarah have done this week. And they're talking to students and meeting them in a place that they were already hanging out, but maybe didn't know they were going to talk about Safe Routes to School. When I start with planning assistance grants and ask people about all of these things, the why behind it, we are trying to get to people not only to identify issues and opportunities they have for infrastructure and program related things in their schools, but we're also trying to create excitement for Safe Routes to School and create awareness that it's happening. There's turnover in schools. There's new people coming and going. Students obviously graduate, staff are turning over. So we have to create excitement and more awareness every single time we're out there. We talk to a mix of ages, everyone from younger students where we're showing up with coloring pads and some sort of prize to entice them to come over. So maybe we could also talk to their parents. While students are coloring, we ask them if they like walking and biking and what sorts of things they do with their families. But we also talk to older students and parents. We have different methods of doing it, but we make it specific to that group. And I'm sure you all have found your own ways of doing that too. We go to them. This was one of my favorite events from, I think this was 2019-2020 school year down in Dodge Center. We showed up at a local football game. They told us that everyone goes to the football game on Friday night. So we went to the Snake Pit. The Triton High School had a football field that they called the Snake Pit for their mascot, and sat right next to the concession booth to talk to folks as they came into the game. We use a mix of strategies. So sometimes it is just tabling at events. Sometimes virtually it ends up being a call with a PTA group. Sometimes you can take advantage of existing assets that the school is already doing. On the right was a gym class in Lake City, and I cannot believe that this worked out, but they're down there. And if anyone is from Lake City, please say hello in the chat. They have a gym teacher at the time, at least, who brought students out into the community mid-school day on bike rides to get some exercise as part of gym class. So what we did, we went down there and we set up a bunch of flags along their route. And at each one, they would stop and we'd ask them some sort of question about biking, what sorts of things they were seeing as they were biking. And ask them questions. We had some chalk out as well, and every single time there was like a question, chalk question, they would stop and put a tally mark to answer something really quick. And it was a really cool event. I don't know if it could be replicated, but that's kind of the point, is you listen and figure out the ways that are best to get into the school. Another thing I think I already mentioned was finding those local team members who want to get engaged, and folks that are Safe Routes to School champions already. This was a Halloween event down in Spring Grove. This is Karen. Karen came ready to go, dressed up for the Halloween event, and helped out at the event with us and our team. We brought materials. Karen brought a lot of energy, and I think we kind of shared different strengths. Karen knew everyone who was coming up to us, so she would say, "Come on over." She was not new to engagement, but leaving materials behind and asking the team to continue on and do engagement throughout the plan is a great way for people to be involved in their plan. And again, a couple on the call, I want to shout out Sarah and Sophie, have already this week done some engagement as part of their planning assistance grants. We use a mix of materials. We have kind of a toolkit that we go back to every year. They've changed throughout the years. So left was one of our original things, and I think we've improved on it a little bit, but even simple things like how do you get to school can get cool pictures like the one on the left. And then something a little more substantive on the right with some older adults. We have a program cards that we use that we ask people to read about the program on the back, and then we have a discussion, and we hear things like, "Oh, I never thought about a walking school bus. Like, I kind of want to get to know my neighbors, and I know that they walk their kids sometimes, so I'm wondering if we could join up and walk to school together and get a group of kids." So those are the types of discussions we have when we use our program cards. We use a lot of online engagement. we especially relied on this during the pandemic. This is a screenshot of Bachman Safe Routes to School plan from Farmington that we're doing this year that gives some overview. And then you scroll down and there's a bunch of interactive things. There's links to our caregiver survey that we've been using since the beginning of the project. We've honed it every single year, improving questions so that they're questions that people can answer quickly. We've done a student survey more recently that is a simplified version of the caregiver survey, specifically for students and maybe even the younger students. I wouldn't say much younger than 4th, 5th grade, but we've started to see some traction on this in various schools. Sorry for the blurriness on this slide, but this is just a screenshot of one of our comments on our comment maps. This is from Hilltop Elementary School, and you can see we get feedback like Cahill is a barrier to get to Hilltop. It's a nice way of being able to capture some of those things that we might not get otherwise if people weren't at our events, or maybe they see us on social media or some sort of newsletter that the schools push out and they can go get their own feedback. This was one of my favorite projects that I've ever done. This was Sarah-led school in St. Paul during the pandemic. We found a school that actually does real world projects as part of their curriculum. And it just so happened this year that the math teacher and English teacher were looking for some sort of survey related project for their middle school students. And we were able to suggest doing a student-led survey where the students actually created and promoted the survey to their peers. And then in their English class, so in their math class, they talked about survey methodology. We did a presentation on some best practices. And then in their English class, they actually summarized the survey information into presentations. So that's a great way of students advocating for themselves and figuring out what they like about walking and biking among themselves, while also doing some learning on the side. And that was just another, we heard an idea for getting into classrooms, and we took them up on it. I think it was a very successful way of talking about walking and biking directly with the people who are doing it. We're always looking for ways to improve. I think the way we've done engagement over the years has always inherently been equitable, but we're being a lot more intentional with it in the more recent school years. We do an equity scorecard activity as part of our rapid planning workshops, where we ask people questions like, who are the communities that will be directly affected by the plan? Who are the communities indirectly affected by the plan? Who are the historically untapped communities? After some sort of presentation brainstorming time, we usually come up with some pretty great ways to reach out to different communities. And I think being more intentional about that has been one of the greatest improvements that I've seen on Safe Routes to School plans over the years. This is our photos from this year's school. We went out to a barbecue in Brooklyn Park. And I don't even have photos from the previous 2 nights. We were at Harding High School in St. Paul last night. And then before that, we were at Bachman Middle School down in Farmington the night before that. So I'm still getting photos from those, but this is one of our busiest weeks we've ever had. Just the number of open houses that are going on. We're trying to show up where families are already at. We have 3 events tonight, all in St. Paul, where we'll be out and about at different schools in their open houses. So a bit of coordination, but we heard that there were a bunch of open houses happening, and we wanted to take advantage of the people who were already showing up there. So in total, we've done 40 Safe Routes to School plans over the past 6 school years, both in-person and virtual engagement. We really aim to empower our local team to do their own engagement after we leave. We want to leave them with materials and ideas for how they can continue the engagement side of things. It's fun to show up and talk to families about walking and biking. I don't think anyone on this call would disagree. So hopefully that just leads to some more momentum and creating more awareness within the schools. We customize existing materials. There's usually just a grab bag of materials that we can go to, but we're also happy to create new things. We lead an equity scorecard activity. We started that last school year to be a bit more intentional about equity. We still don't have all the answers, unfortunately. And if anyone ever gets on a call and tells you they do have all the answers, then they're lying to you. But we're learning, and I think we're being better about it every single year. And then we also create our engagement summaries that get wrapped up as part of the overall Safe Routes to School plan as part of the planning assistance grant. A few lessons learned. These are some things that I think anyone could take with them as they go out to their communities. People are busy. That's nothing groundbreaking, but families and school staff have so much going on already. It's a lot easier to show up at things that they're already doing rather than trying to make an entirely new Safe Routes to School event. And it's just about finding the right person in the school to talk to and to help us out. Students are too young. Students who are too young or live too far away from school, you can still talk to them about walking and biking. Obviously, you talk to them about how they're walking and biking in their neighborhood, what sorts of skills they're learning. A lot of times we'll be at the school, and the first thing either the student or the parent would say is, "Oh, we're too far away from school. We can't walk or bike to school," or "I'm too young. I can't walk on my own." Still engage them, talk to them about what sorts of skills they would like to build in school. Students love bike rodeos. They love park and walk days where they get to have a little exercise before the day. There's so many different ways that you can engage people who don't think that walking and biking to school or the Safe Routes to School brand is necessarily geared towards them. It is towards every student, as you all know. Having a walking and biking champion in the schools who knows what's going on is an amazing asset to have. I wish there were people like Sophie and Sarah at every single school district or every single school. And I know that a lot of you on this call are that person. And then working directly with the students is amazing. We love getting into classrooms. We love getting into after school groups. It's not always possible if there's not someone who sees the connection between walking and biking and what they're doing in the classrooms, or they have too much going on. But when we can make that happen, that's the absolute best engagement we've done. That's all I got. Any questions?
Thanks, Tom.
Anyone else on the call want to add anything? Colin or Sarah or Sophie? I called you out a few times.
I can jump on. We were at Bachman Tuesday night, and it was just super fun to be back in schools and just talk with individuals. A lot of them were like, we asked questions and they were thinking we wanted the very good answers. And we're like, no, we want to know like your actual barriers to how to get to school. And like, we want to hear it so we can put it into a plan and work with the city to change it. And it was just kind of nice to see parents be like, oh, you actually care. Like you want to know why we're doing this and how do we can support it. Yeah, so it was fun.
I'll just add in, I mean, we had a good engagement night last night too, but I find that the more interactive things are, the better, not just for engaging people, but when you have like people with who speak different languages or have different kind of literacy levels, those visual kind of activities are much easier for a wide range of people to participate in. So like those paper surveys are just like really difficult for us to do, but the ones where it's like dots and photos and things where they could kind of like get a lot of context from it and participate without having to write a lot is tend to work a lot better.
Thanks, Tom and Sarah and Sophie. I see a request from Kathy. If you could share an example engagement summary in maybe the post email we send out with all of the slides, that might be really helpful for folks who are looking to see like the nitty gritty of how that turns out.
Definitely. Yeah. We've got lots of examples.
One question that came to mind for me, which I don't know if this is a question for Tom or if anybody else who just spoke up would want to chime in. I'm curious how you think about sort of the tension. Tom, you named, like, it's still up on the slide, right? People are busy, families are busy, school staff are busy, and also thinking about like that sort of right alongside something I think we all believe is important, which is like building safe routes to school champions at schools, right? Whether those are teachers, whether those are parents. Just kind of how you think about those two pieces of information together, because I think it can be really hard to be like, yes, these families are really busy, I want to respect their time, but also like be investing the time that allows you to build those champions over time.
Yeah, I think knowing that they don't all come from one place is really important. Safe routes to school champions can be teachers, they can be staff, but they can also be parents, they can be last year in Rochester, we worked with a nonprofit called Pata de Perro. They do bike related things in the community, and just connecting them to the Safe Routes to School plan was just a huge asset. They do bike maintenance. They were interested in working with students. I think we're finding different types of champions all the time. It doesn't have to be the gym teacher at every school. It doesn't have to be the principal who happens to bike in their spare time. It can be anyone.
Thanks. I think that's really insightful to just make sure we're always broadening our definition of who a champion can be. And also see a note in the chat kind of thanking for great advice about showing up where people are already gathering that you covered early in the presentation. So thank you so much, Tom. I think for the sake of making sure we end this call on time, I will move us along to our next agenda item. I feel like we could talk about this for a really long time though. There was just so much richness in that presentation, and I'm excited to hear Jill have us now think about how do we evaluate.
And and these pair, to your point, same part, or these are on the same coin. I don't even think they're on opposite sides. There's a flow that any sort of evaluation activity you're ever doing is a way to engage. I mean, you're talking to somebody, you're asking them what they think, what they know, and that's going to ideally inform what then you're doing. You take that information and you apply it, and you then go back to them saying, hey, how about this? So I think there's a lot of synergy here. So I was trying to kind of adapt some things as I was hearing Tom talk. But to get us started, hi, everybody. They pulled me off the bench. I'm back, baby. Deal with it. I see no faces other than Colin and Sam. Sarah, I know you're smiling under that mask. I can feel it. I'm excited. I recognize lots of names, but I don't recognize a lot of names. And that's exciting for me. So I'm Jill. I used to work with the network all the time, and then I got pulled away, but I still sneak up. I'm like a bad habit. And here we are. So let's talk about evaluation. I have a poll question for everybody real quick, just to get oriented. There are a set of evaluation tools, and I am curious who's used, not so much who, I'm not naming names, but what you all have used. So there's the student travel tallies, there's parent caregiver surveys, there's a school hazard observation tool, there's a school environment and policy assessment, there's a safe routes plan implementation survey, and there's a school implementation progress checklist. So we'll take about 30 seconds here. You pick multiple, or you can choose multiple because you may have done multiple. You might not have done any. That's great. It's all good. So we're going to just watch as these results come in. I think I have the power to end this poll. I think they've made me a co-host, everybody. Look out, it's going to get bumpy. I'm seeing answers. They're still moving around a little bit. I'm going to give about another 10 seconds. And yep, and somebody said, what if it's 0? That's okay. I should, you know what, we could have had that as a choice. But I am noting that, you know, so I'm going to end the poll. Here we go. All right, so there are some new folks. So we have the survey tool that's been used the most. Here, let me share results. Looks like it's very close between student tallies and parent caregiver surveys. And that those have been used, I think that's looking like 20 times. And a total of 24 people answered. There's 38 of us on here. I'm going to say, so that helps me know who's brand new. That helps me know there's a lot of wisdom on this call, and that's fantastic. So my next question, knowing that there's a lot of wisdom on the call, and I'm going to ask if folks can use the chat for this, or if you don't want to use the chat and just unmute yourself and speak up. Why do evaluation? Like, I know there's a lot of public health people on here, so you all have answers. But why do you do it? All right, good. Something's coming in the chat. Helps to know what we are doing is working. So effectiveness. And Alyssa, if you wouldn't mind helping read off things in the chat, because I'm also going to take some notes here.
You're just doing it all. You're
I know.
Facilitating, you're taking notes. Yeah, I see some other things. Funding justification, that's very real. Second, to know what works and also what doesn't work. It's a little bit different than knowing what we are doing is working. Gathering data to tell the story of your work over time, making it sustainable. Finding new ways to fill up calendars with projects. Keep them busy. And then continue assessment for gaps in the community. Okay. These are great. This is good. This is why I was asking. And I like that somebody had I equated it as busy work. Maybe I'm gonna come back to that after we talk about the tools. And it's a little bit of what I think it's important to not do evaluation for sake of evaluation, but it should serve a purpose. In my work at Blue Cross, when we're setting up reporting requirements with projects or thinking about different surveys, if a question if we can't use the information, we're not going to ask it. And so if an evaluation tool isn't going to tell you what you need to know, or is just like not responding to anything, like, ooh, don't do it. But I think it's a reality. Sometimes it does become busy. So let's talk about the tools that are there. Let me flip my screen around here. I'm going to share my screen. But what's I think most important, I'm going to put a link in the chat. Oh, no, I'm not. I'm going to put something I did not mean to copy. Well, it's nothing too creepy. And let me just copy this. So we're going to look through the tools. And I'm just going to show you where, for all of our new folks, here's the great thing. So with the Safe Routes work, some efforts were put in at every couple of years or so, there's an evaluation work group. And that went from, there were very few tools to kind of setting up a core base of tools. That said, they aren't everything. And there's always ways people have either customized some of these tools, or they have created something else that's specific to their situation. And I think Tom's presentation illustrated some of the way planning happens and some of the way they're getting information. Those are evaluation activities, but they're going to a very specific need within those communities and taking unique approaches. So what I'm going to share with you is just the beginning and the basics. Let
Let me share my screen here. So the link I put in the chat is to the Safe Routes Resource Center, and there's an evaluation page. And if you haven't done any evaluation and you're even thinking like, what were those tools she put in the chat that were in that survey, they are all right here. And so I'm just going to give a high level, here's what's what. And the spoiler alert would be, if you have questions about any of these, you can always reach out to Dave. You can always reach out. I mean, I'd be happy to, again, to field any questions outside of this call. And, but just there's one call for help away, or we are one call for help away, and it's good. So big thing is, first of all, there is the evaluation, the user guide, and that kind of goes into a lot more detail about each of these tools. The parent survey and student tallies are one of the oldest tools used in Safe Routes to School. And I would say the evaluation work group that consists of Dave, Will, who's the Safe Routes coordinator at Richfield's done that, Dylan at MDH, and there's some other folks who've since moved on who've been involved with the group. We lean more favorably towards the parent survey, that it has a little richer data. And the other pieces with the student tallies, we've had mixed feedback of like how helpful that information is, but the student tallies is really can be on paper, or asking the teacher to do a quick survey of show of hands, how did kids get to school today, and tracking that and doing that over the course of a few different days. And that information can be helpful, but there's also, we've had a question added to the Minnesota Student Survey to capture student travel for elementary and middle school age. And actually, I think it did make it into the high school level too. But that's one other place we can kind of look at mode travel throughout the state. So, but student tallies is something, but Dave has been pushing and asked me specifically to emphasize the parent survey. So if you haven't done parent surveys for a while, it's a little different than it used to be. There used to be a paper version. You could type in the answers and submit those to the National Center. It's not that way anymore. And in fact, Dave has gone on, oh shoot, the little thing on, wait, get out of here. You click on the parent survey and it takes you right here to the survey where you can select a school that's already listed, or your school just like create an entry for your school and make sure people are using a consistent name. And one thing that we've added to the parent survey that was not there before is asking grade, gender, then other demographics and economic information and language. You can, so I'm scrolling real, sorry if anybody's getting a little nauseous on that. So scrolling through real quickly. We have not historically asked that demographic information. That's a change, again, as we've been incorporating equity into Safe Routes to School. You can't address inequities if you don't know what they are. And so I think when you get this survey data back, then you can be looking at, are there discrepancies between students of low income or higher income in terms of needs and, you know, and issues and barriers and what's showing up? The other thing might come down to, if you have resource choices and can only spend so much time, you may start where you're seeing a certain population that's at a higher risk. So the fact that we have that is great. And then the next questions get into oh wait, I think I tested this beforehand. We're going to go to the next page. And then this gets into the questions about how they arrived to school. And also then there's some built-in concerns. And so when you get this information back, you can take that and look at it and be like, well, what are the top concerns that the parents are talking about? And it really can inform your action planning. If you're dealing with great physical infrastructure, but a lot of personal safety issues in terms of bullying or in terms of just perceived safety, you know, you have a better sense of where to jump off in terms of putting your energy and strategies to get more kids walking. So if personal safety is coming up, it might be more group activities, looking at walking school buses, or looking at just more presence of school officials outside greeting the kids, that they will feel, or some, so it's just, you can play around with it. So these answers are all here and built in. So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. So that's the parent survey. Okay, then when we get into this school hazard observation assessment, that's another tool that was developed, and there's the formal tool that the group developed that, and I own the fact I was heavily involved with that. It's a little heavy-handed. And then there's an adapted version that's not yet available on the website, but I think our plan is to get that available. And with the school hazard survey, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen here. And hang on, I want to get to the right slides. Yeah. All right. So, and let's start this one. Oh, sorry, hopping through. Oh, by the way, Kelly's babies are doing great. That was for later. Okay, so the hazard tool is a way similar to a walk audit, where but instead of walking the route, you're going to pick one spot. You're going to observe the flow of people on foot, on bike, in cars. And with this tool, you end up noting, and there's a lot of instructions to it, but you find a specific, you'll note where you are. Are you by a four-way intersection? Are you at a crosswalk? And you start noticing if people, how they're moving. Are they crossing against the light? Are cars stopping for people? Are people observing stop signs? Are they kind of rolling through? What are the different things you see? And again, that may help identify different types of improvements that could be made, some permanently and some temporarily. So this is a tracking sheet that can get used in it. And then it also has a way that you can take your tally numbers to figure out percents. Just to know, like, oh, of the 100 drivers we saw, 82 weren't stopping. So 82% of your drivers weren't adhering to kind of rules of the road. So what that, again, moves into a conversation of what you might want to be able to do. The simpler version of this, again, thank you, Will. Oh, hold on, sorry. Can everybody see this? Which, Sarah, I can see your face. So if you can see that it's a different kind of word, okay, thank you. This is a simpler version that Will designed, and we will make this available. And where it's really just, again, same idea though, but you set yourself up at a specific observation point, and then you're watching and just able to make a note. And there was intention here of both, like, who's causing the risk and who's most at risk. And sometimes it's the same. It might be that 12-year-old on a bike who's, like, cognitive function is such that they might be a little riskier. But it also may be a distracted driver with a 7-year-old who should be fine to be able to walk and, and cross the street. And that, that's the situation we're looking at. So this is one other way to track that you, as either a safe routes coordinator or local public health, would be somebody who could, or a planner, could kind of do that observation and then take this information back to school officials saying, or city officials saying, hey, here's what we were seeing and observing. The last thing, I'm noting time, that with any of these tools and in the instruction resource, there is a note about how often to use some of these tools. And a key thing to note, like with the parent survey, doing that annually or semi-annually could be really beneficial to you, to get an idea of, again, progress, to get an idea of if they are if you're like seeing new concerns that have emerged because of some sort of change within the community, or like a change for good too, that something you thought was a concern is no longer a concern. So doing that survey at least annually, and if not semi-annually, can be very helpful, and again, should demonstrate progress. The school hazard tool is a little trickier. We haven't seen it used where you can do like a before and after. And often you may go to the same site and then see a different hazard. You might not see the hazard you were seeing before of note. But again, the idea of doing that annually, or the fact that it's hard to do every intersection or point around a school campus, so you may be kind of rotating between locations. I'm going to say there are 3 other evaluation tools that some people use. Dave told me not to worry so much about those, but they are other planning assessment tools that get a little deeper. And if you're curious about those, I'd say just check out the resource guide on the evaluation page. So I'm going to just pause and ready for questions. Or also, there are people on this call who really have done a lot more evaluation and could talk more about this. If anybody wants to add or correct anything I've said, I'm more than happy.
Love
And
a
I'm
good uncomfortably long silence to get people to volunteer.
I know.
A classic.
I was prepared, by the way, to call on a few folks, but we were shorter on time, so you were all spared that. But questions, and there were some people that commented in the chat that they are new and haven't used any of these. Is there something like, did any of this make sense? Or that you think, I could try that. I'm going to try that. Maybe if you heard something that you're like, I'm going to try that, put that in the chat. Or tell me what you're going to try if you go to the state fair this weekend. I don't know. You could say both.
I love the excuse me, like the hazard assessment, because after meeting with like our school principals and different like safe routes to school staff, we wanted to just like stand there and kind of watch and see the flow. And this really gives us a tool to use to have kind of more data and numbers to track, like, okay, what are we looking for? And we can have more concrete information besides just like standing there and watching.
Yeah. Quick tip, if you're doing that kind of observation, especially if you have an extra person, like if you have a volunteer with you, make sure your principals know you're doing it. Don't necessarily tell parents you're doing it, because they'll like just the act of observation will change their behavior. So you do kind of want it, you want them to behave the way they're going to behave. But and sometimes having the principal out helping with the observation that they might see things, that's also good. But again, people then pivot and are on better behavior than when they're not being observed.
Jill, I see a couple other notes in the chat of people very excited about the hazard assessment.
Yeah. And that is one, if you have any questions while you're thinking about how to set that up, call Will. No. Well, actually, you could talk to Will. He's done that. He's done it on kind of an ongoing basis, but also I'm more than happy to do a phone call and kind of talk through, just like strategize about setting it up. But again, keeping it as, I think when we were designing it, we were like, a fleet of volunteers are out observing all at once. And that, I think, again, felt heavy-handed, and it's more kind of 1 or 2 people just go out, observe, and you kind of slowly chip away at it, as opposed to a larger, more coordinated event that, again, felt, I'll say heavy-handed. And again, I designed it, so please let me, I'm not.
I think there's benefits to that dispersal too, in terms of like weather, right? Like if you schedule everything on a day and there's a particular kind of weather on that day, like people behave differently when there's snow and when there's rain, and like, yeah.
All right, and Sarah's added online surveys don't work at all schools. Doing in-person engagement and paring down the survey has worked better for me in some places. Thank you, Sarah. Yeah, you please feel empowered to adapt as you see, like you know your schools, you know your people. So, and Will is putting his email and phone number in the chat. I love it.
Volunteer.
All right,
being
we're
volunteer.
at 11, so I'm gonna zip it.
Yep. I'm just going to close this off really quick. I think there was a lot of really great information in today's presentations. I again wish we had like a half hour more to talk to both Jill and Tom about things, but we have the time we have. So, and it is coming up on the long Labor Day weekend. It is the sprint to the start of the school year, or for some folks, we're already in it. And so we'll just briefly note that we have this call every month. If it's your first call, welcome. We hope we'll see you again. If you are a recurring guest, I feel confident that is largely due to Jill's charming personality, and we're happy to have you back. Next month, we'll hear more from Dave about boost grants and the MnDOT Resource Center relative to some of those upcoming grant deadlines. And then in November, we're going to be talking about accessibility and adaptive bicycling in Safe Routes to School, which I'm very excited for. So thank you all for joining us this morning. It was nice to see your faces. I hope you enjoy the long weekend, and we will see you next month. Take care, everybody.